This is section 2.4, and we're looking at part C, factoring trinomials with coefficient a equals 1. So first, we just want to examine two equations that are in factored form and in their expanded or product form. Okay. What I'm trying to do is go from the product form back to the factored form, and I want to do a comparison with this example in particular to see how that works. Okay, we've actually already done one like bottom one. The bottom one is by factoring out a GCF, and we saw how to factor with a GCF in part A. What we're looking at specifically in this section is how to break it into two binomials. Okay. So to figure this out, I need to examine how a product works. This is the product of x plus 3 times x plus 5, and I know if I distribute that, I get x times x is x squared, x times 5 is 5x, 3 times x is 3x, 3 times 5 is 15, and I know I combine those two middle terms to get x squared plus 8x plus 15. What I want to know is how do I break up these two numbers, the 8 and the 15 that I see, to get back to the 3 and the 5. Okay, so it turns out that the 15 comes from the product of 3 and 5, and the 8 comes from the sum. So what I'm going to do while I try to factor is try to find two numbers that both multiply to 15 and add to 8. Okay. So that's my thoughts just written out here. If I'm going to try to factor this, I want to find two numbers that multiply to 15 and add up to 8. And that's how I get 3 and 5. They multiply to 15, they add to 8. Okay. So we're going to work through a few examples. That's just kind of some of the theory behind it. We're going to look at several examples as we move into this section. First. All right, so I need two numbers that first multiply to 30, that have a product that gives me 30, and a sum of 17. Now, it's important just to write down anything that you think of, first of all, that multiplies to 30. Like, for example, the first thing I think of that multiplies to 30 is 3 times 10. Right? 3 times 10 is 30, and 3 plus 10 is 13. This pair doesn't work. It does multiply to 30, but it does not also add to 17. So you try again, just trying to think of other things that multiply to 30. The next thing that I might think of that multiplies to 30 is 5 times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. When I add them, 5 plus 6 is 11. So again, I haven't found it. So I need to keep trying, divide 30 by various numbers. You might not know all of the factors of 30 off the top of your head, but if you divide 30 by 2, you'll find that 2 times 15 is 30, so that's another pair. So 2 times 15 is 30, and 2 plus 15 is 17, so that's going to be the pair. Okay, so when I factor this, it's going to factor into both of those are positive, so x plus 2 and x plus 15. Okay, let's try again in the next one. This time my product needs to be negative 40. So I know that when I sum to 3, I'm actually using a negative and a positive because the only way to multiply to a negative number is with a negative number and a positive number. So this sum is really going to be a subtraction because one number will be positive and one number will be negative. Let's start with anything I can think of that goes into 40. The first thing that I think of is 20 and 2. 20 times 2 is 40. So I'm going to do 20 minus 2. Right, because I would need to have 20 times negative 2 to get negative 40. 20 times positive 2 is positive 40. So 20 minus 2 is 18, so that doesn't work. Okay. Something else that multiplies to 40 would be 4 and 10. So we'll do 4 times negative 10. Okay, that's going to be 4 minus 10. That's going to be negative 6. Not the right number. I'm trying to get 3. What else goes into 40? Let's see, 4, 10, 8. 8 goes into 40. So let's do 8 and negative 5. So that would be 8 minus 5. That's my number. That's 3. So this is going to factor as n with a positive 8 and n with a negative 5. Note that if you had chosen 5 and negative 8, that would have added up to 5 minus 8 would have added up to negative 3, so that would not have worked. We need the one that has the 3 coming out positive, so it needs to have the 8 as a positive value and the 5 as a negative value. Positive 8, negative 5, in order to get that 3 to come out positive. Let's look at the next page. The next page is going to help us with those signs a little bit more, those positive and negative signs. So, some tips. First of all, if I'm factoring something of the form x squared plus bx with a c positive, okay, if c is positive, I know that the only way to multiply two positive numbers with two of the same, it's got to be positive positive or negative negative. Okay. So the middle number is going to help me determine exactly whether it's two positives or two negatives, because if the middle number is positive, the only way to add to a positive is with two positives. If the middle term is negative, the only way is with the two negatives. Okay, so if I see a positive end term, I know it's either two negatives or two positives. Two positives, two negatives. Makes it a little bit easier or quicker once I know what the signs need to be. So 12, I need to break out 12 into two positives, two of the same, get a positive number, so two positives, make it the note like that, and just start finding what goes into 12, add them up to get the middle value. So 12 is 2 and 6, so 2 plus 6 gives me 8, that doesn't work. 12 is also 3 and 4, so 3 plus 4 gives me 7. That's the pair I need. So this factors into x plus 3, x plus 4. See how that works again in the next one. This one multiplies to 20, but that 20 needs to add up to a negative 9. The only way to do that is with two negatives, so I start finding things that go into 20. For example, negative 2, negative 10, but that adds to negative 12, doesn't work. But negative 4, negative 5, that adds to negative 9, that one works. So my answer has to be x minus 4. X minus 5. Okay. What if your last term has a negative? If your last term has a negative, the only way to multiply to a negative is if you have different signs, one negative and one positive. So in this next one, I need to multiply to negative 16, so I need one positive, one negative. Now, I know more than that because I know that these numbers need to add to a negative 6. The only way to add to a negative 6 is if the larger number is negative. Okay, so I start thinking what goes into 16. That's going to be 8 and 2. The 8 needs to be negative. The 2 needs to be positive for the answer to come out negative. So this is going to factor into x minus 8 times x plus 2. X minus 8, x plus 2. Okay, last. In this box, so I've got negative 24. It's negative, so I need a positive and a negative. This time, they need to come out to a positive 2, so the larger one needs to be positive. So we try things like 6 and 4. So 6 minus 4 gives me 2. I got it in the first try again. That was an accident. But I also could have tried a wrong answer and gotten like 8 and 3. So 8 minus 3 is 5. That one doesn't work. It's the first one that works because I wanted a 2. So the answer is x plus 6 times x minus 4. I always like to write down a couple tries because you do not always get it right in the first try. But showing your work is very important because sometimes you can't factor. And if it cannot be factored using any possible combination of numbers that multiply to your c value, then it's prime. And the only way to show me that something is prime is to show me all the things that you've tried so that I can verify that none of them work and that it truly is prime. Right. Check out the back side. We've got several more problems to factor. Okay, when I'm factoring, step 1, always check for GCF. If there is a GCF, factor that out first. Then factor what's left inside the parentheses. Okay, so you can't factor it all, it's prime, of course. So I'm going to start this one. There is no GCF, so I'm going to start with my negative 20. And it's negative, so I need a positive and a negative. And the larger one has to be negative because I want a negative in the middle. So I start thinking what goes into 20, and I think 10 and 2, so negative 10 plus 2 is negative 8. That doesn't work. And I also think 4 and 5. So 4 minus 5, the larger one, 5 being negative, gives me negative 1. Perfect. So I know this factors as x plus 4 and x minus 5. Now, it doesn't matter which order you put these two factors. It could be x minus 5 first, then x plus 4, but it does matter that the 4 itself is positive and the 5 is negative. Last, next one, 8. Need to factor that into either two positives or two negatives, but I know it's two positives because the middle term is positive. So I think, okay, 8, well, that's 2 times 4, so 2 plus 4 is 6. That doesn't work. 8 is also 8 times 1, and 8 plus 1 is 9, and that's perfect. So this has to factor into w plus 8 times w plus 1. Next. Before I factor, I get things in the right order. I got to have my x squared first. So I'm going to reorder this to x squared plus 19x minus 66. Then I know that the C value, negative 66, is what I'm factoring. It's negative, so I need a positive and a negative with a larger positive because the middle term is positive. So I start thinking anything that goes into 66, like 6 and 11. So if I did 11 minus 6, that would give me 5. Doesn't work, so I try again. 66, I don't know, I think 2 goes into it. 2 goes into it 33 times. That's 33 minus 2 would, I got those signs wrong, so I want the large one to be negative. I got the signs wrong up here too. Oh, I want larger positive. No, hold on. Yes, larger positive. I was looking at the negative 66 for some reason. Larger positive to get a 19. So I do want my 33 positive and my 2 negative, but that doesn't work anyway because it gives me 31. Okay, so 2 and 33, no good. Let's try 3. 3 goes into 66 22 times. So 22 minus 3, that gives me 19. So that's going to work. So my final answer will have a positive 22, x plus 22, and a negative 3, x minus 3. All right, because those both multiply to a negative 66 and add to a positive 19. Next, negative 90. Positive and a negative to get a negative. Want a negative middle number, so large or negative. What goes into 90? First thing I think of is 9 and 10, large or negative, so negative 10 plus 9. That's negative 1, so that's not what I want. Try again. 5 should go into 90. 5 goes into 90 how many times? I don't know with all these large numbers, so we just check. 90 divided by 5 is 18, so I've got negative 18 plus 5, which is negative 13. Not working, so I'll try again. Let's see what else goes into 90. 5 went in. 6 probably goes in. 90 divided by 6 is 15, so we've got negative 15 plus 6, and negative 15 plus 6 is negative 9, so we found it. Okay, so this one factors into m minus 15 and m plus 6. Last two for this section. I noticed the first thing I noticed is there's a 5. It's a coefficient in front of t squared. And I can't factor using this technique. There's a coefficient. But I do also notice that 5 is a GCF. So I factor out my GCF first. So it's 5 times t squared plus 3t minus 10. Now, I should be able to factor again, ignoring the 5, using this method. So I'm going to take negative 10, break it down. It's negative, so I need a positive and a negative. Middle number positive, so the larger one needs to be positive. So 10, that's 2 times 5. So if I did 5 minus 2, that's 3. So that's going to work. Keep your 5 on the outside, then do your t plus 5 and your t minus 2. Part F, not written in the right order. You need the leading term first. So we're going to write this as negative 3x to the cubed. That's the highest power. Then plus your 30x squared, next highest power, then minus your 75x. You can't factor using this technique if you have a coefficient, or if it's not x squared. So, but first I can take a GCF out to fix that. So I can divide these all by negative 3 and x. And if I divide that out, it's going to leave me with just x squared in the first term. Good. 30 divided by negative 3 is negative 10. X, negative 75 divided by negative 3 is positive 25. Okay. Now, this trinomial piece is of the right form, x squared only, no number in front of it, so I can factor it using this technique. So I'm going to take the 25. It's positive, so 2 positives or 2 negatives. In this case, 2 negatives to get that to be a negative 10. So 25, that's 5 and 5, so negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. That's going to work. Don't forget your negative 3x in the front. Then you would write this as x minus 5 times x minus 5, or since you have the same factor twice here, your final answer would be negative 3x times x minus 5 squared. And that is the end of this section.